All right. Good evening, guys. Good evening, Binta. Good evening, Edwin. How is it going today? We're going to continue from where we left off yesterday. Okay. So, by the way, I just shared the link to this document, right? It's currently in the chat. I'm sure you can see that on my GitHub account, right? So I basically shared the link to the repository, the GitHub repository, right? So you can clone that, or you can simply, you can simply view it from your browser as well. Okay. All right. Hello, Kofi. How are you doing? Okay. So I want us to get to 30 people so we can proceed. But I mean, you guys need to learn to join faster. Okay. Um. Yeah. So that we can move very, very fast. Yeah. Hello. Okay. So that's any great. Good evening. OD Bass. How are you? Okay, so all right, good evening, Chim. Is that Chimsi? I hope I'm pronouncing your names well. Yeah, Imole Ayo. Hello. All right, so we still have we just have 24 people here. Please drop a message. Drop a message in the Discord server, right? in the 300 Dev Days channel, also drop a message on WhatsApp. Yeah, on your group chat on WhatsApp, so that we can start already. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. I want all of you to drop a message on WhatsApp, which is like 22 messages. I'm sure the others would get that notification. Okay, so go ahead, drop a message on WhatsApp, drop a message on um what's it called? I'll drop a message on Discord. Yeah, on Discord. All right. Okay, so 806, let's continue. Yesterday, we were able to cover a couple of areas. We covered, JavaScript, right? So we understood, what JavaScript is and, how JavaScript is meant to function, right? Yeah, so we mentioned that you can use JavaScript on the front end, on the back end, and we also tried a couple of example. We understood how to work with, basically how to work with the script tag, right? And we also, covered some things such as variables, creating strings, right? Working with strings, working with arrays. We did not do anything very complex, right? And because of the limited time we have for some of these our classes, what I've done today is that I have created a long list of materials that we're going to be working with. Now, obviously, we won't be able to cover every single one of them. As a matter of fact, I did not include, the extra details on objects and on JavaScript classes. Okay, so I would cover this in one of the streams, or we will also look into the details by next week. All right. But for today's class, we're simply going to dive into the details of each of these items, from strings, objects, arrays, working with arithmetic operations, basic control flows, and we'll also discuss functions. So let's just get started because of time. So if you clone this repository, you would find the details, and we're going to follow the examples here, to make it a bit faster for us to move. Okay. So right here, I'm going to create uh, you know, different files. I'm going to start with one. I'll simply call this string. Let's call this string.js. Okay, so strings.js. All right. So when we take some of the examples from here, we'll basically use that in our code. Okay. All right. And as I move on, please do well to drop your questions in the chat. Let's take it, step by step. So yesterday we discussed strings, and we're also going to be covering strings again. Yeah. All right, so these are different ways to basically define strings in JavaScript. I mentioned this yesterday as well. So you see from the example we have here, let's simply move this into our code. All right. So what you're seeing here is you can basically define a string with a single quote, right? Just like what we have here, single quotes. You can also define the string with your string with double quotes, right? Just like what we have here. And then you can also use template literals, right? When working with template literals, so basically this is how you use template literals using this sign here, right? Okay, so I have JavaScript is, and then I basically have the curly brackets, right? You see, I have the curly bracket with a variable within that curly bracket. So I have the sign with the curly bracket, right? And then the variable within that curly bracket. So what this is basically doing is that it is taking the value. Okay, I think if you are watching, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not using your laptop, I think you can also zoom in on your end. But let me increase this a little bit. I think this is better, right? Okay. Okay. All right. So you can basically include the variable just like what we have here. String single. We're basically taking the value from string single and we're putting that inside the string, right? So it is going to treat it here as a variable. Now, if you don't use the template literal pattern, this is going to print the whole thing as a string, which means it is not going to identify this as a template literal. All right. So let's go back and use this option here. All right. So we have string one, and we have string single and string double. We can also change this. So let's try to work with something better. I'm going to say let name, or let's do first name, right? And I'm going to say marvelous. Let's last name. I'm going to simply say Doe, for example. All right. So, and by the way, let's just change this. Let's use our regular John Doe. Okay. So we have first name and last name. So now we are simply going to use the string literal, right? And you see we have full name, first name, and last name. Okay. So if I simply say console.log full name, just so you can see how this would function. Let me pull up my terminal. So what you're seeing here is my terminal, correct? And I am going to run this file. This is located in the JS folder. So all I need to do, remember we installed Node yesterday. If you haven't installed Node, I think you should do that already, okay? Watch the video from yesterday. Visit nodejs.org official website, and you can simply navigate to download, and make sure you download the LTS version, okay? So I mentioned that yesterday. All right. So let's go ahead and run this file at strings. Okay. So now you see we have John Doe. By the way, forget about this. Right. That's an error from my terminal. So just ignore that for now. All right. So you see we have John Doe right here. Basically, what we've done is concatenation, right? But using the string literal. Now you can obviously do something like this. So you can have first name, right, with some space there, and you can also have plus last name. Okay, so this is going to give you the same output, right? It's giving us the same output as you can see, but then imagine having like a long list of variables to concatenate. So let's say we have let age, and age is equals 35, for example, right? So I'm going to say John Doe is, and would have by the way, right. So John Doe, which is the first name and the last name. So I have another plus. I'm basically using the plus, this operator you are seeing here, to add the strings together, right? Now this is looking lengthy. There's nothing wrong with this pattern, obviously, but if you can use the template literal, just let's take a look at the difference, okay? So I'm going to call the second one full name 2, and I'm simply going to use a template literal instead, right? So let's go ahead and use a template literal, okay? So now you see we have using a template literal, first name and the last name, right? We did not use these signs because we can simply maintain the space in between. Is age years old, right? So this is referencing our variable. All right, so if I print full name 2, yes, we're going to have the same output, but then this is easier to reason about. Okay, so that is how you work with template literals. When creating a string in JavaScript, you can use a single quote, double quote, or using template literals. Okay, so by the way, if you have questions, I would give 1 minute after every explainer session like this to take questions. Okay, so you have enough time to drop your questions in the chat. Go ahead and drop your questions if you have any. All right. So while we wait for you, I think we can just let's just adjust this a little bit. Okay, so if you have any questions, go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. Okay. All right. So I think we can proceed then. So basically, when working with JavaScript, you can actually work with constants, right? So we did not mention constants yesterday, but I will just quickly describe that before we proceed. When working with constants, you're trying to say, okay, this value should not change. Someone said, "Can we have you throw more light on this string?" Um, Okay, how did you use the terminal? Aha, okay, okay. All right, let's go back a little bit. So I'm going to close that. Uh, at least you already know how to pull up your VS Code environment. You know how to write this simple line of JavaScript, right? So you create the string.js file, okay, and then you write this set of code. Okay, you can simply follow through if you're currently using your laptop. All right. If you want to bring out the terminal, you can simply go to View. Let's see, you can go to View, you can click on Terminal. All right, I'm sure you can see that on my screen. Navigate to View, then click on Terminal. All right, so that would open the terminal. I actually use the shortcut. The shortcut is also found here. Okay, so if you look through, you see what you have here. We have that shortcut, right? So you can see that shortcut right here. Okay. I don't know if that was clear enough. I hope so. Okay, so you can see that shortcut right here on your, if you're using a Windows machine, of course, the shortcut would differ, right? If you're using a Mac operating system, you're using a Linux machine, yeah, so just verify that shortcut from your machine, right, from your computer, and you can simply use that shortcut, which is what I did here, right? Rather than clicking before opening it from here. Okay, so I simply use the shortcut from my machine. Okay, so let's clear this. Just clear what we have on the terminal, and we can proceed to run that particular script. Now, if you look at this here, you see I have that script located in a folder called JS, right? And I have string.js. So this is what I need to run. I already installed Node.js from yesterday's session, right? So all I have to do now is say Node.js, which is the directory, right? Slash the strings.js, which is the name of the file. Okay, so then I can run that. Now you see I have my output. John Doe is 35 years old. Okay, so that was for Genevieve, right? And Emeka is asking, can we have you throw more light on the string? I think you should be more specific as to the area, right? But what I'll do now is I'll take this again, okay? I'll just take it again from here. Um, this is a variable, right? So this is a variable. We have let string single equals hello. What we are capturing here is to show that you can basically create strings with different, different type of quotes, right? So we have the single quote here, right? We have the single quote here, and right here we have the double quote. Okay, so we have the double quotation sign here, and it both, it works, right? Both of them would work, and they are going to give you the same output, right? This is the string with the single quote and the string with the double quote. All right. Then we also have the string with the template literals, right? So this is our template literal string right here. So we have JavaScript is string single, string double. Okay, so what we are basically showing here is we are trying to put in the value of these strings into these, into this other string, right? And using the template literal, we don't need to use the plus operator to add things up. Okay, we're just so I think I mentioned that already, Emeka. So I said that using single quote or double quote, it gives you the same, result. The only thing you should note here is if you are trying to, so let's take a look at this now. When I have hello and I have or let's say we have something like hello, ma'am, right? So if you look at this, for example, you see that this actually breaks, okay? It breaks because you already have a single quote, outside, and you're also trying to use a single quote inside. So at this position, JavaScript thinks that you've terminated the string here, okay? So then this results to an error. All right. So when you have a single quote that way, you can actually use the double quote inside, and that works, right? If you have a double quote outside, by the way, let's keep it this way. If you have a double quote outside, for example, let's do that again. So right now you see we can use the single quote inside. All right. So it doesn't matter which option you choose to use, single quote, double quote, that's fine. Most likely you would find yourself using double quote most of the time, and you would also find other developers using double quote because yeah, I mean that's more general across multiple languages. So you would find most developers using double quotes, while the string literal basically or the template literal basically allows you perform concatenation in a more clear and concise manner. Okay, all right. Thank you. So do we have any other questions? Okay, so if we don't have other questions, of course, you would get access to this file, and you can also follow through on the material that have been pushed to GitHub already. Okay, so string immutability. Now the thing is, I think I was about to explain constants. Let me go back to that before I forget. Okay. So in JavaScript, you can actually create constants using the const keyword. Okay, I zoomed in already, and if I keep zooming in, then it's going to be a problem on my part because it's kind of looking too big. Okay, that's fine. Let's let's proceed. Okay, so when working with const, by the way, you can also zoom in on your end, right? Let me see if I can change the. Okay, probably this is better. Okay, so I have const, and I can simply say something like const. Let's say we have a particular string that should be a constant, for example. Okay, so we can simply call that I don't know. Um, let's just call that school name. So let's just assume, the school name is constant, right? And it is a constant, which means, we actually don't want to change this, right? I don't know if you have used some language like Python, you realize that, yes, you can make a couple of adjustments even when you try to make something constant because it doesn't really support constant by default. Right here, if you make an item constant and we go ahead to maybe alter the value, for example, so let's just change this. Okay, so we have Code Academy. Let's say we have Code Academy training, right? So that's an example. Um, let's try to print that. Okay, I'm going to take this off from this file because this file is focused on strings, not constant. But I was only trying to show this example here, at least so that you can, get that understanding that when you say something is a constant, you shouldn't try to alter that value because it is going to throw an error, right? So it says we have a type error. We are trying to assign a new value to a constant variable. Okay, so this is meant to be a constant. So if I take that off and I run this again, now you see we have code school right here. Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, I hope you understand how the constants would work. We'll get to that again in a later session. We'll get to use constant in a more practical scenario. But yes, that is basically what I need to explain for now. We have string immutability. So basically, JavaScript strings are immutable, meaning that once created, their content cannot be changed. So basically, I actually want to explain that when you see operations changing that string, what you're doing is you are basically modifying it, right? You're basically modifying the string, and you're creating a new string from that modification, right? So just to make you understand the concept of how it actually works behind the scene. To you, it is being modified, but basically what you're doing is you're creating a new string, right? And yes, using this example, you see we can actually go ahead and run this. By the way, this is more conceptual, okay? Because when you are coding, this is not something you would actually think about. What we are simply doing here is we're picking the original version from here, we're transforming it to uppercase, right? And we pass that into a new variable. Okay, so by the time you print this, you're seeing you have the initial value, you have the new value that you've transformed to uppercase. Now we'll get to talk about this. Strings actually have what we call string methods. This is an example of a string method. You see we have to uppercase, right? Now what is this doing exactly? This is basically transforming the text you have to uppercase. When I hover on this in VS Code, you have the and that's why we recommend using VS Code, right? Because then you have this simple these features that can give you some sort of explanations, right? So it tells you that okay, to uppercase is actually a string method, right? You can see that here. So it's a string method, string dot to uppercase. It's a string method, and it also tells you the functionality. This would convert all the alphabetic characters in the string to uppercase. Okay, so if we go ahead and run this, for example, in the same file, you see we have the initial string, we have the uppercase string. Let's make some adjustments. I'm going to call this code school again, and I'm going to adjust this now. Let's try that again. Let's run. And now you see we have code school in uppercase. So yes, if we also have code school like this in uppercase, so we can also have dots. to lowercase. Let's see if I should run this now. You see we have code school in lowercase, right? What we passed in was uppercase. Now we have lowercase, and there are other string methods, right? There are other string methods we're going to be looking at as we proceed, with the class. So we'll get to that shortly. Let's move on. All right, so I already mentioned templates, literals, and how it works, right? We also have patterns on how to escape, special characters. For example, when I was showing the other one with the hello ma'am, right? You notice that it actually broke at one point because we're trying to add a character that would, affect the initial character we added. So let me go ahead. I'm going to copy that. Let's copy this line. All right, Control C. And let's bring that in here. Okay, so you see we have let special string, we have I, and then we're trying to use this again, even though we are currently using a single string. Now we can simply go ahead and use a double quote here, and that works, right? As a matter of fact, we no longer need this. Okay, so this works. But for example, you say, okay, I want to use a single quote and I still want to include this. What you then do is you escape that character. So using this is the backward slash. Basically, we are able to escape that particular character, and then this is still going to work, right? As you can see, this is still going to work, but we're able to include this simply because we escaped the character. If we don't escape that character, now you see this is broken. Okay, so yes, you can actually learn to use this in your code when you're trying to add some special characters that might affect the string. You can simply escape it this way. Okay, so if I run this now, by the way, we need to print that. So let's say console.log special string, and let's print it. So now you see we are able to include that as well, even though we are using the single quotes for the string. All right. Okay, so yeah, so we also have a string method we can use for checking the length of a string, right? So let's go ahead, copy this, let's bring it in here. So that is a string method for basically checking the length. So this is basically a property, sorry, and we're using this to check the length. Now a string method, of course, would have this. Okay, this is just a property that will return the length of that string. Okay, so now we have a string right here. Good morning. Let's say I am a programmer. All right. And when we say console.log greeting.length, let's just call this string text. Okay. String text, copy and paste. Okay. So I'm a programmer. When we say string text.length, this gives us the length of that string, right? So if we run this now, you see the length of the string is 17. Okay. I'm a programmer based in Nigeria. Save, run this again. Now you see we have 34. Okay, so that is how to get the length of your string. All right, so you can always come back to this reference material here. Okay, so if you want to access the characters in a string, basically, the string itself can be treated as an array, right? And it is regarded as an array of characters. Okay, so we have multiple characters, HELLO. So we basically have character 1, character 2, character 3, character 4, and character 5. All right. So if you say console.log and you use the square bracket with the index. That is what I'm going to explain right now, the index. Okay. By the way, let me answer some of the questions there. Binta is asking, is the length of the string in pixels? Basically, it's the counts, right? It's the count. So, 0, 1. So basically, you are looking at, these items, right? So when you say in pixels, we're not referring to like, CSS, you know, uh, length or width and height. Okay, if that's what you are referring to, we are simply referring to the counts. Do you understand, Mike? You are simply referring to the counts. Okay, Binta. All right. Any other question? No. Okay, so let's proceed. We have let string equals hello, right? So we also have a console.log string and we say 0, and this is returning h. Now, when working with an array, you should understand that the way you count the items in an array as regards the index, it starts from 0. Okay, so H is a 0, E is 1, this is 2, 3, and you have the item here 4. So you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So if we say 0, 4, this is definitely going to give us O, right, as the output. Okay, let us comment on this first and let's run this. So you see we have O as the output. All right. And yes, if we say 1, then you are expecting E. Now, of course, this is not how you would define an array ideally, right? But a string is basically seen as an array of characters, as I mentioned earlier. So if we have hello 1, for example, and we get, the item at position 5, then this is going to give us 1, which is the last item there. If we get the item at -1, right? So you see, okay, so basically this gives us, undefined, and I'll tell you why. This is basically a mistake that I've seen a lot of people make, especially coming from other languages. You know very well that you can always, count from behind, right? But when I try to use it here, you see, I actually got, undefined. Let's go back again. I'm simply going to do. Okay, let me see. Somebody said, "What do you mean by special character?" Hmm. All right. Let me take that. So when I said special character, I was referring to, that particular character we have in the string. Ideally, these are basically, special characters, but I was referring to that character we had in that string because we have a single quote like this, and then we have something like "I am," right? Which is, I'm sure you use this in your regular, writing, okay? In your regular writing. Now, this basically is what we're trying to escape. So when you have a character like this, if you have a different kind of character, you see that yes, that is actually working, right? We don't have an error. But in this case, knowing very well that we are already using a single quote, at this point it becomes a special character that we actually want to, leave within the context of the string, but we simply cannot use it because of the single quote around this. Okay, so in order to keep it, we simply have to escape that particular character. All right. So that's exactly what you get there. If you also have a double quote here, for example, another double quote here, and for some reasons you want to use double quote, yes, you can also escape it. If you don't escape it, then yes, you have an error, right? So you can escape. Okay. So I can see we have more questions coming in. Okay, so someone is asking, what do you? Okay, I think I answered that already. Does the length count the white space? Okay, so that's a good question. Let's see. If I have let name equals um, John Doe again, John Doe, and we say console.log name. So let's save this. Let's go ahead and print this. So now we have John Doe, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so if we say give us the length, right? Save. Let's run that again. So now we have 8, which means this white space is also included, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so yes, it also includes the white space. Sorry, it includes the white space in there. Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Please, in the string counting at the space. Oh, okay. So I think that's also the question from Michael. Okay. So any other questions? Drop your questions in the chat so we can still move on. We already elapsed 35 minutes. Okay, so I mentioned string concatenation, right? We've done this already. Yeah, so we've tried that already. Converting values to string. Okay, so you can basically use this string wrapper right here to convert values to string. Yes, so okay, so various methods including string, this and this can be used to convert non-string values to string. Let's focus on the first one here, which is the most obvious one, right? But yes, you can experiment with the other options. Let's go ahead and try to convert something to string. So we have an age, for example. This age is 45. I think I already have a variable with age. So let's just say we have class number, right? And we have that class number to be maybe something random like this, 1872. and we simply get let's start by printing that class number. Okay. All right. So if we want to convert that class number to a string, we can simply do string and we wrap that, you know, this. So let's save. Let's run that again. So yes, this is printing out as a number, but yes, it's actually a string. So we're going to get to see how you can check the type of these items, right? Using type of. Um, we'll get to that. I think I have it somewhere. We're going to get to that. Let's move on fast. Okay. So you can actually compare strings as well. So you see we have an example where we compare strings right here using so basically, we're doing this comparison using the comparison operators, right? So we have greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and we have checking if this is actually equal to the other value. Okay. Yes. So you can actually perform this comparison. Okay. So you see we have let result equals a less than less than b. Let result equals a. So of course, if you are actually doing this, yes, I'm sure that when working with this kind of checks, what you're basically doing is you're performing this using the numerical values of the characters. Okay, so that is what is happening here. It's actually performing this using the numerical values of the characters. If you have any familiarity with the if you have any familiarity with working with I'm trying to see. I don't want to make this complicated for those of you that that probably would just start saying this is math already. So the way you have you have zero, you have one, two, three. So A, for example, you have one, B, two, right? Um, so you can actually do those kind of checks. It's one less than two. Okay. So it is picking the numerical value of that character and performing that comparison. It's not actually comparing it against the character itself, A, okay, or B, because of course that doesn't apply when it comes to mathematics. Okay, so I hope that explanation makes it better. So you have Z and you have A. So if you're checking if A is greater than Z, then obviously you're going to get a false, right? Yeah, so that is just to explain what you're saying there. Uh, all right, so that is it for strings. I think we can move on to objects already. We've taken up a lot of time. Okay, so yes, I explained a couple of things around working with objects yesterday. The way you have your key value pairs, basically used for describing an object. So you can actually apply this to, describe an object in a real sense, just like what I did yesterday. First off, if you want to create an empty object, you can start off by saying, by using the empty braces like this. Let's create a new file here. I'm going to call that file objects.js. So let's say objects.js. Okay. So if we have let's empty objects equals this. So yes, if you console.log that empty object, you're simply going to get. By the way, let's delete this first and say not example, but objects. Yeah. Okay. So let's do that again. So you see we have that empty object because, yeah, there's nothing in there. All right. Let's go back. By the way, I think I should also present this. Okay. Give me a minute. Let's close this. All right. Okay. So if we try to use an object like this already has some properties, right? And of course, you can also include the properties here, but let's come back to this shortly. So this already has some properties. A person has a first name and the last name. When I hover on the person object, you see we have some description about the object, including the types, right? So we have the first name, which is a string, the last name, which is another string. And yes, we can print this. So when you print this, it appears this way, right? One cool thing you can actually use to visualize objects very well is if you use the console.table. Console.table basically presents this as a table, right? So it makes it easy for you to visualize what you have. If we have age as 35 or 45, department, for example, maybe computer science. I don't know, maybe we have role as a lecturer. Okay, so let's save that. So if you run this, you see you have those details, on that table. All right. Okay, so let's go back to using log. So if we use log, we can basically log the details of that object, right? And yeah, so I mean, the main point I want you to understand here is you can basically use the person, you can basically use the object, just like we used it here for this person object to actually describe an entity, right? So if you're working on a code base and you probably have some sort of entity, so for example, we can say let human, right? Human, okay, equals, and then you can start by defining the properties, right? So you have legs, maybe two, you have hands, right? Maybe two, you have head, uh, okay, sorry, one. Okay, so not three, but one. All right, so you can have other properties, and at the end of the day, you can start by let's use a small letter for that. You can start by doing this human.legs, right? And of course, you can print the value just like this. And yeah, you have the value. So two legs, that's a two legs, okay? All right, so you have two legs, just like what we have here. All right. So basically, you are using this as a way to actually organize that set of data. So which means the object has to be most likely, right, an entity. It's a better way to describe it because these properties in a way has to be related to that object. So if you have a car and you have the car color, and other details, let's call them properties. They have to be related to the car. And that's a better way to then describe that car by saying, car.color, car.make, car.type, right? If you have employee object, you can have employee.name, okay, department, employee.age, employee.date employed, right? So you see that it's a good way to actually structure objects together. And yes, you can actually work with that object afterwards. If you start off with an empty object, you can also go ahead to add that property right after creating that object. So we can have empty object dot let's just call that new property, right? Equals I don't know, let's just call that hello world. And if I say console.log that empty object, right? If we try to print that now, let's go to the top a bit. You see we have new property hello world. It was initially empty, right? And we logged it while it was empty. Then we also went ahead to add a new property and we were able to print that value right here. Okay. So if you have any questions, drop your questions in the chat. Yeah. Okay. So and let's look at some of the methods that we can access. By the way, we can also decide to include an item here using this pattern. So we can actually include an item here. We have legs, hand, head, we have eyes, for example, and this can be two as well, okay? So if we go ahead and console.log human again, right here, let's log that. So now you see we have included eyes, but we did not include eyes in here. We actually included it outside. This time around, we used the square bracket, with the key, right? And then we added the value, okay? So this is similar to also doing this eyes. Okay, so this is quite I would say easier to work with, right? Straightforward. You don't need to include all these details. You just use the dot notation here, and you include that new key, right? You say equals the new value. Okay, so yes, it's up to you to decide which option you want to use. They would both give you the same result. All right, let's go back to that file. Okay, so when you're assessing the property, just like what we've done now, the person, we can also use the other option that I mentioned, right? And you can basically modify some values. So if you already have a value in there, you can go ahead and modify it again, right? Even before printing, okay? Before working with it, you can modify again. So I have human.legs in here. I can also go ahead and change it again in here to say human.legs. And I make this now this is going to be weird, but let's just say 3, right? And if we print this, so now you see we now have the legs adjusted to 3, all right? Okay, so let's go back to this file. All right, and I hope I am not too fast. If you have questions, drop those questions in the chat so we can take them before we yeah, I mean, time is moving pretty fast. So drop your questions in the chat. If you want to delete a property, right, in that object, you can simply use the delete keyword. So we can delete human dot legs. Okay, so let's take off the leg. All right, so this is becoming weird. I'm going to change this whole thing now to let's use something different. Let's use employee, for example. Right. So if we have employee and we have employee name as John Doe, right? John Doe, and we have the date of birth can be DOB. I'm simply going to say maybe first, I don't know, first 1990. All right, and then we have what else? Let's have the department, right? Okay, so let's put department as IT, and let's say role as DevOps engineer. Okay, so now we have the employee object. So we can simply say, let's start by printing the employee console dot use table, for example, employee. All right, so let's print that. You see, we have the employee table right here, and we can go ahead to delete a particular item. Let's do delete employee dot role. Okay, so let's take off the role. Okay, so now we've taken off the role. Let's go ahead and print this again with another console dot table employee. All right. So remember, we've taken off the role already. So let's print this. So you see, the first time we printed this, we have the role. Okay. The second time we deleted the role. So that doesn't appear when we print it again right here in the console. Okay. So let me look at the chart. We have two. Okay. I think that's a question. Before learning React, is it important to learn JS? Um, it is good, very good, right? Trust me, it is very good. I really don't want to. So, when you say, is it important? When you call it React, it's actually React JS, okay? So it is good, and I would say necessary, in my opinion, right? That you learn JavaScript very well, okay? Because you're going to encounter things in those frameworks, and yes, you might tell yourself, oh, I'm not actually using the core JavaScript, it's not necessary. It is actually necessary because if you're not using JavaScript itself, like writing a lot of methods, then yes, you're not doing anything advanced yet with React or Vue or Angular, okay? You're just doing boilerplates and templating, right? Basically writing HTML and CSS. That is the fundamental. You're going to do way more than that, right? You're going to be required to do way more than that. Performing dynamic placement of objects, placing items you get from a server on the UI. Trust me, you should know JavaScript, right? You should know and learn JavaScript. Don't run away from it. It's necessary. All right, so that is how you delete a property from an object, right? And you can also check if a property exists. Yeah, you can check if. Did I miss any question? Let me see. Um, why do you always start with let? That is how you define your variable let. By the way, we also have var, which is the older way of doing things. We have const, which is how to define with constant. So when I say let, we're basically defining that variable. If you don't use let, you're not, defining it yet. Okay. Did I skip any question? Let me scroll. Okay, no. All right. So I think the next one there would be, why does JS always end with console? It's not ending with console. We are learning JavaScript itself not to use on the browser yet. We'll get to that later. We need to test and see the result of what we do. In order to see the result of what we do, it shows in the console. At least for our example, so we are printing it out, in the this is the console, right? This is basically what we're calling our console, the terminal. So when we say console.log, we're logging that so we can see the result of what we've tried out. Now you can preview this on your browser, obviously, right? Even with the console, but you're basically previewing regular text. Do you understand? And okay, so for the fish terminal you are using to view all the JS output, did you use the extension on VS Code? No. So basically, that is So when I install fish, it basically applies on all my instance. So I can actually switch that. So I have it installed natively, right? But yes, you can actually change it if you don't want that. The default I have is Zish, right? That's what we call it, ZSH. Okay, but we have Bash on your Windows or Linux or Mac. You would probably have, if you're using Linux, you probably have Bash, right? If you're using a Mac, if you're using a Windows, then yes, you can actually get bash if you use git bash. Okay, but if you're not using git bash, then of course what you have is cmd and powershell. Okay, which also works, right? Just run the command node and put in the name of the file, right? That works well. Forget about the extensions I use. That's not very necessary. Okay, so I am trying to print in the terminal like you're doing, but not getting any output. How is that done? You have to save. Okay, so do I click Control Save and just display? Yeah, you have to save. When you save, then you go ahead and run it. Okay. So you see, when I add a code here, I press Control S. Of course, I did not say it, but yes, you have to save. After saving, go ahead and run that file. You have to run the file. You see, I'm using Node with a file name. Okay, Node and the file name. And of course, if you have that file in a particular path, you have to make sure you put in that path there. Okay, so that is how you run it. Okay, so back to this, I want to move faster. I said you can check the property to see if it's existing before you probably get to work with it. Okay, so you can simply check if that property is in the object. Okay, and in order to do that, for example, you see we have employee.name, right? So we can simply, or employee.role. So we can simply check. Okay, we can say the name, just like what we have here. So you see, we're checking if that property is an employee. So we can check if that property, which is role, right, is in employee. Okay. So, and this is definitely going to, let's log, okay, not on a table. So this is telling us, okay, so this is saying false, and it's saying false because we already deleted it. Okay, that is why it's telling us false. Let's take that off and try it one more time. Now you see we have true, right? So it was saying false because we deleted it already. When I took that line off, we have true because it is right there. Okay, if we check for department, for example, do we have department in employee? Yes, we do have department. What exactly can we test with, right? That we don't have here. So let's say, do we have nickname in employee, right? That is a false because we don't have nickname in employee. All right. So that is how to check if you have a property in an object. Okay. So the next thing we are going to be looking at here will be arrays. We already discussed arrays the other time as well, but we can, yeah, we can basically discuss one or two things extra. So let's go ahead and create a file here. I'm simply going to call that file array.js. Okay, so I see we have a new question in the chat. Um, Omo, my head won't blow. Don't worry, you can always come back to this file. You can always come back to this video, and this file is also shared on the GitHub repo. Okay, so if you don't have the link, git remote show origin. Let me share that again. I believe you have a GitHub account. Just go ahead and open this, and you can simply preview right there on GitHub, or you can clone this to your machine and follow through natively. By the way, when you get there, remember to follow me. I can see I have 64 people on this call, and I probably have about 80 followers on GitHub. So do well to follow me on GitHub. All right, thank you. All right, so let's discuss JavaScript arrays. This is a JavaScript array. So we discussed how to work with array yesterday, but then we have a new example here. You can use the constructor to basically create a new array, right, without necessarily adding the item immediately. Okay, and then you can go ahead to add the new items afterwards. Okay, you can also work with the array literal notation, which is what we used yesterday, right? We said let colors equals red, green, blue. So this is basically creating an array of colors. All right, we already covered that. This is basically an array, and right here we're trying to access the array items with the index. Okay, we're trying to access the array items with the index. So when we say we are accessing the item on index 0, we are referring to Everest, right? Yeah, so we're referring to Everest, and remember I mentioned that when counting the items in an array, you start from 0. The index starts from 0. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. So when we say index 0, we have Everest. When we say 1, we have Fuji. When we say 2, we have this other item. Okay. Yeah. So I don't need to show the code because I don't need to show the example. Let's just do that so we can have something here. So if I say console.log, let's go ahead and yeah, let's simply do this. So this is array, right? Okay. So now you see we have Everest. If I do 1, save, Control S, remember. You see we have Fuji. If I do 2, right, we have the last item there, which is, yeah, this. Okay. So let's come back to the file. You can also modify the items, right? You can modify the items. Yes, let's also check. Okay. I think I actually skipped something. Okay, so while I was creating this, I think I skipped something. So basically, you can do this. You can say, mountains, of course, with the index, let's say at 0, right? Um, Okay, so you can basically make adjustments, right? If for example, you made let's say you made a spelling error, for example, you can come in here to adjust this, right? Let's have that as a string, and yes, if you do console.log again, let's start by taking this off, and let's just console.log again. Okay, all right. So let's save and let's run this. So you see we had that initial error here and then we corrected it right here. Okay, so let's see, there are some questions in the chat. Someone said um okay, Baba, can your head? All right. I'm curious. Can Python be used in place of JS? If you mean on the web, uh, if you mean on the web, right? Recently, I think there's an implementation of Python that can run on the web. But trust me, with what we have currently, built on JavaScript, it will take a while before Python would catch up. Okay. Um, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with learning both. I mean, if you like Python, but for now we're focusing on JavaScript. So please pay attention to JavaScript. Okay. I would advise you learn by practice also. Okay. Yes, of course, you can learn by practice. There are so many platforms out there. You can actually practice with those platforms. But eventually, trust me, the best way to learn by practicing is to actually build something, a project. It can be a simple project, but yes, build a project. That is the best way to learn. It doesn't really matter the platform. There are so many resources out there, right? There are so many resources out there that you can't even consume, right? So focus on actually building something. Um, all right, thank you, Bernard. Okay, so we just have a minute or a few seconds, but let us see what we can quickly cover. Um, Right. So you can use the dot length as well to get the length of the array. So we can have mountains dot length, right? That is a property that gives you the length of the array. Remember, we have to print this. By the way, you can simply say let's length. Okay, so equals this, and we can say console.log length, right? So that gives us the length. Now, does it matter that you actually put this in an array? It's not very necessary, right? You can simply include that in the console item directly. So if I log, we still have 3. All right. Okay. So there are some other operations like pushing items into an array. So given our first example here, where you can simply create an array just like this. You can create an array without having to define any value. You can then come back to push items, one after the other. So let us create an array here. Let's call this locations, right? Locations as a new array. Okay. And yes, if we print locations, so let's do console.log locations. Not that locate. Oh boy, locations. All right. So if we print locations, then yes, that gives you an empty array. You can start adding items now, so we can have location.push, right? So that is going to add an item to the array. So we can say Abuja, for example, right? And if we print this again, console.log locations, you're going to see that we now have Abuja as part of our array. And of course, you can add more items, right? So we can add Lagos, we can add maybe we can add Delta, all right? So now you see we have 3 locations in our array. Remember, you can also add even objects, numbers, and other type of items into your array, right? So we can choose to add an object, we can choose to add even sub arrays if that is what you want to do, right? You can add a sub array into your array, Delta, and we can have maybe Calabar, right? Let's save that. Let's run it. And now you see we have a sub array right inside our parent array right here. Okay, so that is basically how to push items into your array. You can use dot on shift to basically add an element, to the beginning of an array, right? You can use dot pop, and dot pop is going to take off the last element from your array, basically. So if I do dot pop before printing, let's do location locations.pop. So if I should run this, this is simply going to take off the last item. Remember, the last item was an array containing two strings, Delta and Calabar. This is regarded as one item, okay? Using .pop actually removed that, and if I do .pop again, it is going to take off Lagos and we'll be left with Abuja. All right, so that is what you see right there. Yeah, so if you say dot shift, this will basically remove an item from the beginning. Okay, so dot pop takes out the item in the last position. Dot shift takes out the item in the first position. All right. Now using index of gives you the index of that particular item. Okay, using index of course, with the value in there, it gives you the particular position. So let's take off the pop, right? And now we have 2 items here. Okay, we have all the items here. Okay, so if we simply say dot index of, and then we put in the value of this guy right here, it's going to give us the index, which of course in this case is going to be 0, right? Because that is at index 0. Okay, so someone said, can arrays be used as objects? No, an array can be used to hold or store, different objects, right? So, but it cannot be used as, there are different data structures. So you have an array, for example. An array can be used to store different objects. So we can say let array of objects equals, right? So we have an array. This is an array. Look at it very well. That's not an object. This is an array, but then an array can store different objects. So we can have objects like this. So we can have maybe an ID one. We can have maybe employee ID. Let's call that employee ID one. Let's call that employee name, right? This is John Doe. And we can also have more employees, right? So let's copy this, put a comma. So we have a new employee, Mary Doe, right? And you can have even more. So if we say console.table, for example, and we say array of objects, and we print this. So now you see we have the index, the employee ID, and the employee name, right? Of course, you can add even more details, employee department, for example. Okay, so employee department, let's put in IT, right? And for the second employee, let's simply put in uh, HR. Okay, so if we save that and we run this again, you see now we have the employee department. Okay, so what can array be used for in a real world application? I mean, I'm just showing an example. So you have a set of item, maybe coming from your, I don't know, maybe your backend. It comes in form of an array of, different items. You can simply pick up that array and then present the array, one after the other on your browser. The way you have a list of items on your browser, you're basically working with, the array. Okay. So someone said I skipped. Okay, sorry about that, Binta. We are ending this session right now because we did not. Oh, Binta, I can't find. Okay. Um, do you keep opening a new file each time? Oh yes. I have. I actually create new files here. I'll push this. I'll push this so you will have access to them. Okay. Yes. All right. So sorry, I skipped that question. Let's move on. Uh, okay. Okay, don't forget to like the video and like, oh yeah, please do, right? Please like the video and subscribe if you're not subscribed. What can array be used for in a real world? I think I answered that already. I noticed you are using small and big letter when explaining array. If you are referring to the naming, right? That's just the naming. That's what we called the array, right? And that is basically a camel case notation. I explained that yesterday. All right. So well done, and thanks for joining. I mean, I actually wanted us to cover a lot of things, so make sure you are available to join the stream tomorrow. I will drop the announcement for the time, right? Not the stream here, but we're going to be having a different stream on Twitch. Okay, so I'm going to be streaming and teaching more of these things. But that doesn't mean we will not continue from where we stop in the next class by next week. Okay, so you can have this material, you can practice even before the class, so that when we join the class, come with your questions. It makes the class even more interesting. And yeah, I mean, I can answer some of the questions that is confusing you when you go through these materials. I want us to finish up with understanding JavaScript as a programming language by next week, so that we can then jump into more action. Okay. So have a wonderful evening, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.